Erdogan has been re-elected as the president of Turkey in the toughest presidential election he has faced yet, extending his tenure for 5 more years, and suddenly, now that he has been re-elected, we've seen a big shift away from his signature Erdoganomics. The large Western central banks have been raising interest rates to fight inflation with hikes of 1/4 to 0.5% at a time. The Turkish central bank has just raised its key interest rate, doubling it by a dramatic 7.5% in one go, signaling a big shift away from Erdogan's low interest rate policies, which has been fueling the sky-high Turkish inflation levels. Erdogan has been facing international criticism for his interest rate policies because he has been doing the exact inverse of what traditional economic theory recommends. However, there might be a really good chance he would not have been re-elected if it were not for his low interest rates. Thus that might explain why Erdogan has been so desperately clinging to these low rates, even going so far as to cite Islamic scripture on why Allah would have wanted low interest rates. So let's have a look at what low interest rates do, why there has been so much international criticism of Erdoganomics, and why he probably would not have been re-elected without it. The problem Turkey has been facing is the incredibly high inflation. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a lot of countries worldwide have had troublingly high inflation, but few top the Turkish inflation rate, which peaked above 70% in October of 2022 and still remains around 40% year on year. Traditionally, in order to fight inflation, central banks would raise their interest rates. Tightening monetary policy results in increasing credit constraints and it dampens consumption and investment, reducing demand for consumer and business products. All else equal, it also causes a currency to appreciate, posing challenges for exporters. In much simpler words, this means that if central banks increase their interest rates, this slows down economic growth and lowers inflation. Conversely, if central banks lower their interest rate, this enables more economic growth and increases the inflation rate. In choosing which of these two options central banks should do, high or low interest rates, the primary objective is, or should always be, a stable inflation rate, as can be seen in many of the central bank's founding documents. Because good economic growth does not impact inflation that much, but an unstable inflation rate will definitely create bad economic conditions. So to recap, Erdogan continuously chose to keep interest rates low to make sure that the economy kept running well, but this created a monstrously high inflation rate in Turkey. But why would he do this? The thing is that there is a delay in bad economic conditions stemming from high inflation. Raising interest rates would slow down the economy for a bit, directly. But high inflation creates a lot of problems, but only in the distant future. So why would Erdogan choose the worst option of the two? Well, it so happens that there was an election coming up, which the polls show that he actually might lose this time. Erdogan used the central bank to create better economic conditions in Turkey than there should have been during the election, and with such a close result this might have actually tipped the scales in his favor. Yet, by creating this short-term economic boost, he creates much more problems in the future ahead. Erdogan in this situation clearly chose party over country. He chose for a higher chance of staying in office over the general economic benefit of his own people. So, is this legal? Well, in short, no. To give a longer answer, then still no, but who's going to stop him? Central banks all across the Western world are completely independent from politics. Constitutionally, this too is true for the Turkish central bank. Central bank independence is a concept which developed after decades of abuse by politicians who would use the central bank like Erdogan is using it now, to create short-term economic boosts around election cycles with detrimental long-term economic effects. So to solve this issue, central banks became independent with a strong mandate to focus on one primary objective: price stability. However, perhaps the sole power politicians do have over central bank policy is appointing and firing central bank governors. So guess what Erdogan has been doing every time central bank governors have recently tried to increase interest rates to control inflation?
You're fired.
Currently, the Turkish central bank is chaired by the fourth governor in the past 3 years. Whereas this position is a position which globally tends to be quite stable in its appointments. It is in this way that we should not trust Erdogan on his own words that his low interest rate policies stem from his own economic preference or understanding, or, as he claims, from his Islamic faith. But Erdogan is abusing the Turkish central bank to enhance his popularity as a politician during key elections, something which is very illegal. Perhaps not necessarily in words, but definitely in spirit. And the economic pain the Turkish people will have to endure as a result is just starting to begin. Recently, the Turkish central bank raised interest rates by a shocking 7.5% in a single go, whereas Western central banks often just raise it by 1/4 to 0.5% at a time. This shows the big necessity for rate increases there is in Turkey. But why so late, you ask? Well, the election season is now finally over and the central bank can finally start doing its job, now that it's unleashed from Erdogan's change. If Erdogan truly desires to be the new father of the Turkish nation, then he should start prioritizing his own people over his own political power. If you want more content like this video, then check out my last video on why a lot of Turks generally do like and vote for Erdogan, and subscribe to this channel for more future content.